Hey everybody, welcome back to Conversations in Ken's Cafe. We got a wonderful guest on today. He's been following the channel for a long time, learning lots of stuff, and he has his own channel. So we're also broadcasting to Mo's channel, which is IgroSoil. That's on YouTube, Instagram, and there's one other Mo. What's the other channel, Mo?
Just about every platform under IgroSoil.
Okay, well, I'll put up your Instagram. There's the Instagram link.
Thank you.
The YouTube link, and of course the Facebook link as well. But
all right.
Mo, you do shows on Monday. We were talking earlier, and you tell us. Well, let's start with Mo. Who the hell is Mo?
Well, I am based out of Southwest Florida, and I'm all about soil biology, microscopy. I guess I am a soil consultant, but the microscope and the microbes is what my passion lies in, and how they operate and what they do. You know, a citizen scientist took me a while to say that I'm a citizen scientist, just because, we're never going to stop learning. I'm a student of Matt Powers alumni, so Food Web, and we I before this, I was a contractor that had never even put a plant in the ground. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know there was bugs in the soil, and I felt, I got really sick. The irony was a flesh-eating bacteria was taking me out. Hospitalized for quite a while, and that my journey from there just became passion. I came out of that with just this drive for soil. I wanted to heal myself. These places now, they'll send you home with a 6-pack. I always say they send me home with a 6-pack of drugs,
yeah,
and medications. And it was always been a big guy, so my weight wasn't helping me, especially because I was laid up for months, surgery after surgery after surgery. I was being eaten by this flesh-eating bacteria that it's catastrophic damage, So once you get through these things, you kind of. I had a quote from Bob Marley when I was in the hospital, man. He said, "Some people are so poor, all they have is money." And
yep.
Yeah. And this was, 2020, right at the pandemic. I walked into the hospital septic, and you start to, you get out of that. When you survive that thing, it becomes a matter of where do we go from here type thing, time to rebuild, So.
Well, I know myself, I've almost died twice. I have serious health issues even now. I turned to cannabis and growing cannabis. I wanted to grow natural, so I went down the biology rabbit hole. And we were talking before the show. The guy spent probably 10 to 20,000 hours. You could say I was taking a doctorate's course in all this for all of the time I spent on it. But it's so important to understand this and how our bodies work. And that's where you got this passion from, is you coming out of sickness and you wanted to heal yourself. And that's absolutely amazing, Mo, because that's the driving force that's taking you down this journey. So tell us more about your journey.
Yeah, as I got home, I was open wounded. I mean, it's been years. It took me years to recover from this thing. And I lost everything, business, everything gone. I was really rug pulled of life. And I like to say that, I was working probably 70 hours a week, extremely unhealthy, on the road all the time. Hadn't seen my family in weeks, and they lived 10 minutes away from me type thing. Always spent my life with, I call it horse blinders, just because if you're paying attention, you got to be accountable. It's a word that really stuck with me, accountability. And, there's kind of an empowering thing when you lose everything. When everything is just, where do you go from here? It's the takeaway from being sick was it's not about, dying's the easy part.
Yeah.
That's the easy part, man. It's the living and suffering, or living the rest of your life, what those conditions are going to be. What is that? All of a sudden, man, I heard it all, he's a big guy, your muscle gone, you're not going to walk again. Man, and if you let that indoctrinate your mind, and you let that negative energy come at you, and that's another thing, I back up and I start feeling everything, the earth. My cousin was I said, hey, I want to grow my own medicine. I need to get off of this cocktail of drugs they have me on. and he mentioned worms to me.
Yeah.
I said, worms? The hell are worms going to do for me, dude? You know what I mean? And he's like, well, dude, there's teas and there's these microbes and then this, that, and the third. And I thought, no way. And I started Google University. YouTube University. Found Elaine. Was blown away by Elaine Ingham. I always say she deserves a Nobel Prize for her work. And then I found Matt Powers, man. And Matt Powers just blew me away. And I just couldn't get enough of it, as you probably know, and sent him a message. Again, I lost everything. So financially, I was just holding on. And Matt, he sent me a course on him. And, he said, here's my intro to microscopy. My family sent me this microscope that Matt Powers was speaking on. And I started looking at sand, and, the sand is dead. There's nothing here in Florida. And I had to go. I'm a hands-on guy, man. I got to go do it. Like, I got to go get in there. Okay, if you're telling me that this is the way it's going to get done, let's put some proof to this. And the microscope has allowed me to do that. I don't come from that legacy education or PhD, nor I respected and honor the education, but I was like a baby, being launched out of a cannon into a world where all of a sudden these microbes are there. Soil is alive, and these horse blinders are removed because everything behind me, the stresses of life, all of a sudden I'm like, dude, this is happening for real, right? Like, and forget it. I started obsessing over it as I was rehabbing, and I started feeding microbes. I said, well, what happens if I feed them this, right? And I started correlating what I'm feeding them to what I'm eating, right? So what happens? They love oatmeal, right? And then you go and you watch and observe and make your video, and then and it's you name it. Then I started learning into the power of extractions, and it turns into a massive passion where I dove headfirst into it all, and I started surrounding myself. I took Matt's course, to the T. I think it was like 46 or 47 when this happened to me. So I thought, man, that's another thing, Ken. I'm feeling old, right? I'm like, damn, I find the passion when I'm old. Go figure, And no, I'll repeat with Bob Marley, man. I always say one thing that I walked away from in the hospital. Some people are so poor, all they have is money. And here I am in the hospital, no family because the pandemic didn't allow people to come see me. I'm upside down in that place. I had a couple crashes where they had to pump me with other people's blood, which was like, that's kind of weird, right? You got to deal with that. But when we pull through it, you got to make a decision. Either I'm going to allow this people to tell you how you're going to live for the rest of your life or make it happen. And I started going out and meeting people. I met Rick over at Gardens and Glass. He's always, put me onto you guys. And we, he unlocked me because I started following this rule of anaerobe. Oh, bad guys, good guys. There's no bad guys and good guys in the soil, right? And when you obsess with a microscope, and again, it weaponizes me with the ability to say, hold on, time out, look. I just spent 20 hours looking at these things after a major hurricane here, and there are these bugs that are supposedly bad guys. Nah, I disagree with it, right? It's like a construction job, right? They're there to get the job done and stabilize that system. So I started, I'm telling you, it was like an epiphany. It was like, wait a minute. If microbes are in the soil and the plant uptakes these things, endophytic microorganisms, right? And has a symbiotic relationship with them, and then they're in the fruit, because then you go smash a fruit. Put that under the microscope, and you see how many labs you have there versus what you would get out of a big box chain store that's not organic. If you're quantifying numbers, you're going to quickly understand it. They're not living there. So, I shut everything down, man. A year and a half, no TV. It was rehab and microscope, and then Matt's courses. And then in order for me to learn this stuff, right, because we're talking, I don't know, biology, biochemistry, just the verbiage alone is kicking my butt, man. So I started making videos. I was like, you know what, we got to teach this thing. Kids have always freaked me out, and it became a mission. Like, we need to teach these kids. Are you kidding me? Like, this is doable. It's not hard to save the earth here. It's not hard to build soil, to structure sand, silt, and clay. It's not. We just got to know it. Knowledge is power, right? So I started finding all the right channels. Where can I teach homeschoolers? This, that, like, who's gonna listen? And that's where I've been obsessing ever since. Surrounding myself with people and watching your show. I'm telling you, Leighton, I watched like, whoa, next level stuff. And Quantum Via on your show, those quantum talks you guys have, and that's where we start busting the doors open, right? Like, wait a minute, structured water, frequency, and then you go do stuff like that under the scope, and you watch. Man, it's just, I can keep going and going, bro.
Well, see that, and that's the passion that you have, Mo, and that's where, like, I'm so proud to know you, that you're going out teaching children, because that is our future. We can only do so much. I can do so much. I can sit here. I can talk and talk. I can talk about the energy, frequency, vibration being all the same thing. I can talk to people about cell division, etc. But the kids, when they get it at that young age, and they really truly understand that every cell in their body, in a plant, in an animal, is the same thing, and it's all built from biology.
Yeah.
And it's all the building blocks come from biology. Then all of a sudden they're going, well, why are we killing biology? We want more biology. I want to be healthy. I want to run the 100-meter race and kick the world champion.
Who do we think we are, man? Killing things. That's one thing that we cannot do, is bring things back to life. And we're, I was talking to someone very dear to me, and he was talking about a video he watched where they took a jar full of gas, and they just took out an entire colony of wasps. Who do you think you are? You know what I mean? That's life that you'll never be able to bring back. And when you start looking at things, and this is all part of my journey, right? I mean, when I was probably my worst, I couldn't even get up off the couch, right?
Yeah.
The funny thing is, when I would go to get up, my dog got up and would come to me every time. It's a big dog. The minute he saw that I went to move and get up, he would come to me so I can grab him and pull myself forward. This is the beginning stages to where I was like, whoa, dude, he just knows, he knows what's happening. And that's how blind I was to everything. It was make money, work 70, 80, hours a week, and didn't pay attention to much.
Yeah.
That's right. We can't dominate it, man. You're right. We got to embrace it, right? That's another thing, is that I've always gone, I always say I was going against the grain, if I could be paddling a boat up a river with no paddle, going on, except that was me finding the because I don't want to go this path. Accountability is a mother, right? Like, accountability means that now you know something, and you either gonna do the right thing or maybe be selfish and say, I'd rather go party, hang out, get wasted. You know what I mean? And that goes to everything, so there we are, dude. Here I am, and composting became a massive passion. So obviously, how do you maximize it? I didn't care about plants, by the way. All I cared about was soil. The only reason I even started planting anything is because of the relationship. Mm-hmm. And now forget it. Now I'm like out there talking to my plants. I started planting my mango trees and spraying them with pressure washers to excite those roots. Say, whoa, get ready for this kind of weather here. Hey, yeah. You start listening to people. My mom always tried. My mom from Mexico she put seeds in her mouth, talking to the plants, energy, and I'm like, that lady's crazy. I was the crazy one.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, when you're experiencing it, like I used to do the show with Tony, and he would literally go into his grow and sit there and basically meditate. He'd sleep there because that positive energy would help him. He could meditate there. He could take the blood pressure down. He could relax and breathe again. We communicate with those plants, and we're literally communicating with the biology that exists in those plants, because it's the same biology in our bodies, and communicating back and forth. And they have like 23 senses or something like that. We're using like 5 or 6 if we're lucky.
Yeah.
But when you start communicating, you start showing that love to them and they show love back to you, it changes your whole outlook. That's where your dog, when you moved, your dog sensed that and brought his energy to you to help you because he has that love for you. Well, the plants, guys, it's the same thing. If you love them, they're going to love you back.
12. There was a study, I think it was out of the University of Florida, and there's a couple of things that are so memorable that really launched me to the next level. And they had a plant, they were testing the Brix level on it. Yep. Basically, for those that don't know, it's sugar content in the plant. The higher the Brix, the healthier the plant. And these things were running at a 21 Brix, which means it's untouchable. These bugs can't get to it after. You've got 8 and 14, I think it is, right? 8 aphids won't really sniff this thing out, but the chewers can get to it. Anything above 14, the plant is just untouchable. I call it walking on water, right? Mm-hmm. 21, week in, week out, these plants are jamming at 21. And then 1 week, it drops to 14, right? Whoa, what happened? Everybody wants to know what happened. Dude, we had a hurricane coming. So the plant decided that it was going to pull its energy back in the event that it gets topped off.
Yep.
Reinforce its roots and store energy in the roots. Mind-blowing. Like, here's even more mind-blowing. If you really think about it, it took itself down to 14. So it kept itself at an optimal safe zone and then took everything else that it needed to get through this potential hurricane and this potential event that it may need to be able to recharge and grow. And it strengthened the root zone. When you go from like really not believing in much, but basically creator, I didn't put much thought into it, God, I used to walk around like, I don't know about that, I get my past goes even deeper, man. I was stomping around the streets of California. I was a hot mess, right? We all have a past. And that's why all of your followers, I would bet, and everybody who does this, I say we're battle tested in life, man. We've somehow, in order to be in the light, you got to be dragged through the dark, man. I've never forgotten that. And because when you get through that dark, you understand what it is. There's not much that we're in front of now that would intimidate me or slow me down. It's be the light here. Where are these little ones at? And the brightest light of these little kids. And that is going to be the path to fix what we need to fix. So it's like, who can I teach? Come here, you little fucker. Like we're gonna look at the scope today, and they teach me, right? They're like, hey, Mr. Mo, it looks like a carrot. I'm like, wait a minute, why would that look like a carrot, right? And then they start adjusting the angle on it, and all of a sudden we're looking at something that I'm like, well, and it's always a new discovery, and that's how I teach them. I'm like, listen, we only know 1% of anything. So it's always a way to try to get them engaged. And if it's only 1% of everything, that means we're potentially discovering something every time we look into the microscope. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Well, and like I've always said, is one lit candle can light many without ever diminishing its own light. And Mo, you're a lit candle for those kids, and you're, bringing them into that light of understanding, and that's going to help them, their parents, their extended family, their friends, when they go, if you do this and this and this, that's going to be a lot better. It's going to taste a lot better. You're going to be healthier eating it. And it's all of a sudden can spark something in the other person's mind that brings them on this journey. And like you've been on this journey, you were forced into it, with your injuries, etc., where you had nothing else to do. And all of a sudden things set off in your mind. You went this direction. And it's the same thing that happened to me. I wasn't growing. I was a truck driver. You think I'm going to stop on the side of the highway and start planting stuff?
Smell the roses.
Well, I did stop to smell the roses. I was up in northern Canada. I'd stop in the middle of the night and get out and watch the northern lights dance around me, because I'm like, north of 60 up in the high northern Arctic, right? But I grew up organic, etc. I knew that our plants can be our medicine, because I watched my father almost die a couple of times himself, and my mother brought him back, through nutrition.
Yeah.
And so when I hurt myself and I was on all this pain medication, I didn't want to be on that. I knew how much damage it was going to do to my body. And I went back to high school where, we used to, smoke skunk weed and stuff like that. And if I'd sprained an ankle in football, whatever, I'd smoke a joint and the pain would go away.
Yeah.
So I went back to that because like I was driving, long distance truck and into the States. I could never, smoke anything because you had piss tests and all of this.
Sure.
But when I stopped, okay, well, I want to try this because I wanted to be out of pain without having to take these dangerous medications I was on. And I'd smoke a joint and I go, oh man, my body's it doesn't hurt so much. And then of course I wanted to have the best medication because I don't smoke a lot. I generally make gel caps and I consume edibly.
Yeah.
And so I wanted the best medicine. I'm going to eat this stuff, right? I want a quality product that I'm putting in my body, and that's what took me down, the biological route. And I started with Dr. Elaine, Dr. Gerald Pollock, all these scientists that were looking at this side, and Matt Powers as well. I've never taken one of his courses, but he's been on our channel a couple of times. Amazing man. And if you guys want to get into microscopy, I always recommend Matt. He's next level.
Absolutely.
But when you start taking that information, and I found Leighton Morrison, I found his horizontal soil system. And to tell you guys the truth, when I first saw the horizontal soil system, I shook my head and went, "This guy's a fucking freak." Okay, he's not. That's not how things work. And it took me a long time. And like, if you never saw him on the Future Cannabis Project, him and Brian had 3 years at that point when I found him. I went through and watched every single episode going back 3 years and watched the progression of knowledge and understanding. And that's really what took me down this path of truly understanding the biology, and that it's all about the biology. And then of course the building blocks, because you need sand, silt, clay, and organic material. And then the energetic side, whether that's a light or a different form of energy, including us. You can learn so much at the University of YouTube, which is what you did, Mo. And I'm so proud that other people have taken this journey. But Mo, you've done the kids. I know you offered to come on, and we're going to do another show with you showing your microscopy, because I find it absolutely fascinating. I don't actually have a microscope. But it's something I may get in the future.
Yeah.
It's understanding, it's being able to truly understand that at the root of life, of all organic life on our planet, is cell division. If we don't have cell division, we don't exist. The plants don't exist. And who controls cell division? Mo, who controls cell division, Mo?
Yeah. Hey, we do. Feeding these microbes, giving them what they need. Yep. There's a level of microscopy that I'm always kicking and screaming about, and there's looking at a slide, right? Yep. And then there's understanding what you're looking at, and what I'll say about that, what I mean by that is I'm gonna use Josh over at Yellow Skunk Farm. We're actually I might as well plug it. Thursday, I think he put it out already. We're gonna go live, and it's gonna be there's my boy there. It's gonna be running his ponds. Yellow Skunk Farm presents soil discoveries with IgroSoil. See, we get together and we look at his system, and the horizontal system. On top of me knowing a couple people that grow with that system, the microscopy level in that pond is an educational piece in itself. Because of the moving system and understanding, it taught me so much. And we even look now during the current crash. And the system's telling us, hey, dude, everything's insistent. Things are like, no, I don't. And we're going to be able to, the conversation became, we're going to be able to, and that was part of the groups that I'm telling you about, where it's like, hey, dude, look at this. Everything's just kind of like, I don't want to deal with it right now. We're getting over this major crash. So being able to chase that and understand it and say, hey, this is area 4. There are things happening in the soil when bacteria is happy. Then you see a jive, they groove. It's like worm castings. Everyone's like, oh, your worm castings are boring because you don't see all this crazy nematodes everywhere. That's because they're stable, a stable compost, a stable casting. And I'm speaking from my experience, and I will take this to the scope, right? We can go pound for pound there and let's show each other, because every time I look at stable casting, it's a vibration that's happening there. But you don't see the nematodes everywhere. You don't see all that crazy activity. Why? Because the job is done, like a construction job. I can go outside right now and grab a handful of mulch from the bottom of the pile and show you more biology, active biology, than you will see in a stable system. Because the party's there. There's a party happening and all the beer's there, right? So everybody's showing up to get wasted and get the job done. It's a construction site at its peak where all trades are on deck. When things stabilize and those castings stabilize, everything just hangs and chills. And how do I prove that out to myself? I'll go feed the system again. All right, let's go light it up again. Let's give it some food. And you'll see all this biology ramp back up. And a lot of this I learned out there. I always give props to Gardens in Glass, Rick, just kind of unlock the idea of this one mentality pathway where it's either black and white. It's not black and white. We're so far from black and white, it's not even funny. Mo, get the shit in there. That's Rick for you, right? Like, get it in there. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, but the Soil Food Web, Mo, get it in there. We're going to find out, aren't we, right? And testing everyone's products, too, under the scope. So the scope really empowers us. And then techniques, it's art as well. I've always been an artist at heart. And to me, it's an art. So now I'm looking at bacteria. I'll use an example. I was looking at a compost. I don't want to burn his, we were looking at his soil, and we started noticing exclusion zones around the biochar.
Okay.
If you've ever seen bacteria in a petri dish with penicillin, you see that halo around the penicillin, right? They don't want nothing to do with that. So I'm looking and it's just exclusion zone. It's like, dude, it was so obvious, so there's no lab test that's going to tell you that. I respect the lab test. Don't get me wrong. You can get all the agronomy work you want, but why not look at it right here, right now, while we're in the field, and let's see what's happening. Are your nematodes there? Are if they're not there, why? Is it stable? Can you tell if when you look at carbon, humic acid, fulvic acid, it's a gradient to me, and maybe this is the artist in me, but I can see a gradient, and I can get very close to a pH just by looking at the microscope at this point.
Cool.
Because you understand that carbon takes you oxidate, a high pH, fulvic acid is lower pH, fungi, all of it comes together and paints this picture. And you see bacteria swapping genes, epigenetics, cell division. I've got that recorded. I have tons and tons of video of that. And it's there's another level than just putting this down. And I respect the Soil Food Web. I have tons of family from there, friends and family from there. I don't quantify. I'm going to sit here and tell you you've got 5 billion bacteria in this drop, because guess what? That next slide is going to have 1 billion from the same sample. And that next drop of water is going to have 2 billion, and half of them are going to be dead. And how do you know that? By staining them. And when they don't show up in the stain, that means they're dead. This is Matt Powers' effect. I honor Matt because he's allowed us to open our minds and say, that's potential, that's a potential, and that's a potential. Nothing is set in stone. And, surrounding myself with like-minded people is very important to me.
And it is very important. Like you look at, we've had a conversation here a few days ago where, we were trying to quantify this vegan organic thing, right? And it's become a clique, and we saw that in schools. You were excluded if you weren't doing A, B, and C, if your hair wasn't just this way, there's all these cliques in the regenerative movement, if you want to call it that really harm the people because they put on those blinders again. And you don't want the blinders. You want a wide open perspective of possibilities. What is possible? That we don't know, even 1% of what the biology is or what it's doing in the soil or in our bodies or in the plants. We don't have the technology yet to truly see. We talk about quantum biology. Is there another layer below that? Like I watched cell division of a newborn, when the sperm and the egg met, and all of a sudden it was two cells, and all of a sudden it disappeared for just a tenth of a millisecond, and then it would come back. And it would be 4, and then it would disappear, and then come back, and it would be 8. Where is it going when it disappears? Is it going to, another dimension?
No, you're going deep now. Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
What if? What if our planet? What if our planet is an artificial intelligence where every life form, the biology, us, animals, plants, transmit back to the mainframe, our planet, and we're killing all this biology, so all that data that it needs is missing. And what if that's part of the problem with what's happening with our existence?
Yeah.
What if there's so many what ifs, Mo?
And that's what makes it amazing, and then I would argue that we do have the tech. It's built in us, right? Because over at Gardens in Glass, Rick and Daniel, they'll look at something and, they're just flat out growers. The experience, the observing, the stuff that I haven't done. And this is why I surround myself with people, right? Because it's like, hey, we're going to take the bricks reading on that. It was like, it's at 6. Look at it. What do you mean it's at 6? Look at it. Just pay attention, right? And it's like, wow. Forest bathing, they call that. When you go out and you sit and you just take in the forest or the environment, whether you're in your backyard, whatever it may be. I sat on a Zoom call and they were talking about that. And I thought, that's pretty cool. It's a therapy thing that the people are doing. They're going out and sitting and just, we call that just hanging out in the backyard, right? And listening to these birds and building the environment. There's something about Florida. It gets super hot here, right? It gets so hot here. It's ridiculous. But there's something about being at Gardens in Glass, and I'm out there all the time, and you just check out while I'm there. Whatever I'm doing, I just even forget that it's that hot, because it's just you're engulfed in life. There's birds and there's this and there's just an owl and it's you're watching rabbits do their thing and you just completely just dial in and at the walking into that place, I check out. It's like cool. Put the phone down, other than for shooting a video and share. Yeah, it's you're going quantum here and I'm all about it. I dig it. I was looking at Leighton. Leighton has Trifecta compost.
Yeah.
So that's another thing we do with the microscope is I look at everything. Rick's always bringing in products and I'm always looking at everything. In my early videos, I was a little off cuff and I was probably rude and offended by some of the castings that we were finding. We're talking super sacks of castings that Rick would bring in. Yeah. And then I go put it on the microscope and it won't even sit in solution. It'll just, everything will drop like sand. What? Knowing a worm wrangler here, right? So I've raised worms. I know what a casting looks like. My dilution rates on my castings are 1 to 50. Easy. Mm-hmm. And any good casting, not just mine, right? And then we start getting into what you feed them. So, here we go. What are we feeding these worms, right? And, so I'm able to put products under the microscope and say bullshit. Yep. You know what I mean? And you know what? I don't take shots at the community, right? But I will call it, and Rick will send you the video. Be like, hey, So when I looked at Leighton's stuff, impressive stuff. I can tell a lot of what his inputs are, and it's not. I won't be burning any of his secrets, but he's aquatic. He's got aqua soil, right? There's this power to aquatic soil. You can see all the diatoms in his soil, right? It is impressive the amount of diatoms, and there's stabilizers and all this other good stuff. So I had it on my desk. I did a video on it. It's on my YouTube. And he had dormant nematodes. They're called Dower nematodes. And I have an epifluorescent lamp. I have the power pack, the LW, and that's able to really highlight these things. So what do? I run into the guys over at Sabbath Soil, the Squid Juice guys. I'm not plugging them. They're great guys. And I get my hands on their product because it has a compound in it called beta-chitin.
Okay.
And I wanted to play with beta-chitin. I wanted to, I love testing things. I can show you, if you saw my lab here, I've got everything. I try to get everything. So what do? I take the squid juice, and since I had Leighton's compost on my desk, I sprayed it with the squid juice. All right, let's test it out on this compost. I walk away. 2 days later, I get under the microscope, and there is an explosion of biology. There's an explosion of actinobacteria and I believe Basidiomycota. And I'm like, what just happened here, right? I mean, blooms everywhere.
Yep.
And what followed that were the nematodes. Those nematodes that were dormant woke up. And then I even had it in Matt's class because we go round robins in his microscopy class, where we get to share. So when we got pulled back into the main room, I was like, hey, Matt, take a look. And he's like, all right, don't give me any context, right? He says, don't give me any context. And then he just starts sniping this thing. Bang, bang, bang. And, the conclusion here is that those blooms, so what I believe happened is that this beta-chitin in the squid juice, not to mention amino acids and all that other good stuff, woke up the hyphae because they're made of beta-chitin. They thrive off of beta-chitin. And for those who know the difference between alpha-chitin and beta-chitin, the best way I explain it is like giving a baby applesauce versus the apple, right? The applesauce is going to be easily uptakeable. So these microbes hit it hard. So this biology bloomed. It started unbalancing the system, which woke up the succession of soil. So now everybody's like, oh, it's time to eat, right? So then these nematodes, baby. Yeah, dude, yeah. So to be able to watch this on the microscope, it's a whole different level of microscopy to me, and it's just observing the same way people will go watch birds. I know some brilliant bird watchers, right? It's no different. It's wherever your passion lies, just attack it and be the best at it. And it's a journey that's going to be for the rest of my life, which is exciting.
Well, and like you really described the predator-prey model and how it actually works very amazingly well. Because,
thanks.
If you don't have that earlier biology that feeds the next layer, they can't wake up. They're not going to wake up because they don't have a food source. Like, hey man, I'm sorry, I'm staying asleep. I'll eat when I can, when the environment's right.
Yeah, I'm gonna punch out.
Amazing, yeah,
it is. And then to watch it, I've rehydrated soil with the group, maybe 15 people on a Zoom, taking a completely dry, powdered, dusty soil, rehydrate it, put it on the microscope, and we actually watch a microbe exist, right? Insist means they go into their dormant state. Well, we watch them wake up and come out of that dormant state. And they break out of this little bubble that they're in and zoom, start feeding instantly, start creating life. This is what they're doing, sinking carbon and moving nutrients and chelating things. And they're necessary, man. Get the microbes right, and you're going to get your soil right. You're going to get your native soils right.
Yeah. So we got a couple of questions from Farmer Cheryl. Let's bring them up and see what you have to say on them. A number of regenerative farmers are using GMOs. How can the biology address the use of GMOs?
Man, so right now sauerkraut is a big talk. Okay. Sauerkraut is eradicating glyphosate. These microbes in sauerkraut, go look it up. It's well documented. There are white papers on it, and it's the buzz right now. I am in the belief, and Cheryl, scientifically wise, I can't answer that question. But what I've observed and looked and learned, these microbes. Look, I have some archaean microbes back here. When we got hit by that hurricane at the garden, we got ocean water. Gardens and Glass is not far from the beach. We took on 2 hurricanes in 2 weeks, right? First hurricane brought water up. The property absorbed it. The organic matter was like, all right, we got it. The next one took over. What happens? Rick goes out there and he starts getting these archaean microbes, and we just started broadcasting microbes because they're going to break that down the same way they do these oil spills. Right? These are extremophiles. We've got microbes that'll eat oil. We've got microbes that live in volcanoes. We've got microbes that are everywhere. So they will get the job done the same way they'll eat. I think you had the Sam Baker, the boys over at Wriggle Brew.
Yeah. He's been on a couple times.
They've taken the gut of the worm, put it in a little bioreactor. Let me break that definition down. A jar, right? And they fed these microbes, and these microbes are now breaking down something like 16 bags a week. I could be wrong on that number. Plastic bags.
Yeah.
How's that for remediation, right? And they extracted them from the worm because they don't want to kill the worm. You know, you gotta love life, man. But these microbes, you give them time, they're gonna get it done. You know, let me tell you something. If there's ever gonna be a mass extinction here, it's gonna be us, not the microbes.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Look at first one's here, last one to ever be extinct is what's going to happen there. You know, we have oxygen because of them.
Predator prey that the first one had to be there before the next one could evolve because it needed a food source and so on and so on. Now, as for your genetically modified, what do you do when you put two separate or different tomato plants together and they get pollen from each one? You're genetically modifying it in a natural way. Now, if you're talking about lab genetically modified plants, they still have a certain amount of the genetic code in every single cell of that plant, just like in every cell of our body, our complete genetic code is written there. And it's a matter of having the biology come in that can take that genetic code and use it and get past the modification. But that's one of the reasons they have the herbicides, pesticides, all these fungicides to break the biology down so that it can't do those repairs. So, you know, I'm not a fan of genetic modification scientifically, you know, for most instances, but you know, it's like taking a tomato plant from Florida where Mo is, bringing it up to Canada, my planting it here, and taking that seed, replanting it the next year, and the next year, all of a sudden, it's being genetically modified through its environment, through the soil, through the biology in the soil to my environment. So these genetically modified things can be brought back to their original foundation. But if you can get the original grains, etc., if you can get the non-genetically modified, do it. That's what you want to grow, right? Now, let's hit her second question before we go on too far here. Let's see, Cheryl. It took me time to establish my worm population in a worm bin. It's getting water kefir grains to grow a similar process, or are there quick and easy ways to get them to grow?
To get
now,
the
not
water
the worms,
keefers,
the water kefir.
the water keefers to grow. Yeah, so the water keefers, first of all, if you're not sure of their health, reset them, meaning flush them every 2 days. Give them fresh water, give them fresh sugar, get them well established and comfortable again, right? Because sometimes I'm bad with my I have kefirs for my, planting and biology, and I have my human consumption kefir stuff. Those they get the red carpet treatment because I consume this thing. I would flush those first, but start giving them different. It's consistency with kefirs. I don't know if I'm going to go back to Matt. Have you ever seen his kefirs? They're like this big. They're huge, right?
Cool.
He takes care of them, and he gives them different things. And you throw in, go get organic, like dehydrated fruits or dehydrate your own, and then throw them in there. Like even raisins, for example. It's cool. You'll see the raisins collect the CO2 and start to float, right? That's when it's time to replace that. Your kefirs want to be floating. You want CO2 bubbling, right? And these are things that you want to see that the best way to get them to grow is they're reproducing though. They're small little chunks that reproduce. To get them big and get them growing large, you're going to have to invest the time. That is, I've been working on mine for 2 years and I get excited when I start seeing the larger ones, and Then I'll look at, maybe a video Matt made, and I'm just like, whoa.
You're so far ahead of me.
Yeah. But,
I don't know
it's still part of it.
I don't know if you know the answer to this one, because I sure the heck don't.
Are kefir indigenous to Mexico?
Yeah.
That's a cool question, actually. I mean, did the kefirs come from Mexico? What are you feeding it? Like, what is it? If you put sugar in water, you're going to have labs. Fact.
Yeah.
If you put anything in water, almost, and give it a little sugar, you're going to have labs. So are those labs indigenous to wherever that sugar came from? I don't know. That's part of my obsession. Is I obsess over my mother culture of efficient microorganisms, my SAMS consortium. I know that's a question people ask. So syntropic antioxidant microbes is the SAMS consortium. To not use the EM phrase right here, it is a point that I make, and especially from all the soil samples that I get when I'm doing consulting work. I'll usually run an extraction of the soil if it's healthy enough, and separate the labs, and then add them to my mother culture. And then things that maybe the Rick over at the garden would collect and bring in, that I bring home, I will run and put them in my mother culture. Diversity, because you kind of think, in my mind, I see it like I just put some microbes from Russia in my mother culture, some cave in Russia, right? Like, I don't know how they got here. I'm not gonna speak on that, but they got here, right? And the idea is that, maybe those microbes, because we kill the soil, we're killing these microbes, they're gone. We don't have them. So here in Florida, we're all sand. We want to inoculate with as much as we can, get them all back in there. And with that said, they're exchanging information. It's like, hey, you know what? In Russia, we dealt with a specific type of virus. Let me plug that into your matrix and upload, this information, and now you know how to deal with that, right? And
why, when we're going to South America, do we go in and get a shot?
Right.
Before we go, it's to give us that biology that we don't normally deal with, so that our body has a chance to form the white blood cells, the Army, Navy, and the Marines before we go, so that it doesn't harm us. And that's what you're doing exactly with getting that stuff from Russia, etc. And like Bob, who was on yesterday, he's got biology globally. He's got biology, I believe, from the ocean at the vents down there, that he's got in his mix, and it's that biodiversity.
That's what it is. That's what it is. That's very important. That way, you have there and so in the consortium of efficient microorganisms, or the labs and all this stuff. So in the presence of E. coli is an example, right? You have E. coli. So first of all, there's over like 2,000 strains or something, and only like 12 of them are pathogenic, right? So this whole thing about E. coli, it's in everything, right? Yep. But in the presence of E. coli, the good guys, right, the beneficials, will actually start creating immunity to that thing, and say, in the event that this guy wants to get stupid, get crazy, we're going to create an immunity to this thing, since we've got his DNA here and we know what he's all about. It's mind-blowing to me, right? That's what happens with biology. And how do you do that? Just diversity. That's getting into purple non-sulfur bacteria. Look behind me. That is my thing. That microbe, everybody needs to have that thing. That microbe in your body, in your gut, in your soil, and it is an ultimate cleaner. It is, moves electron. That is a quantum microbe to me, if anything is.
Yeah. Well, it's that, in middle phase of the Winnigaski column, where your aerobic and your anaerobic, it's the biology that can move back and forth. It's the truck drivers going down, picking up a load and taking it up where it's needed, but they can't get through the border, so they can only go part way up, and then they go back and get another one. And their transportation, it's that middle layer of biology that can exist in both sides of the aerobic and the anaerobic.
Sure.
They're extremely important to move nutrients, etc., around in your soils. To your plants are calling for this stuff. the biologist going, I need molybdenum.
They need
Who's
it.
got molybdenum?
Yeah.
Oh, hey man, it's 6 feet down. Let me go get some.
Mm-hmm. It's a photosynthesizer, right? It's got four metabolic pathways. So you know, in your consortiums, it runs the show there. It's the general there. It's saying, hey, yeast is getting a little stupid. Let me change the way I eat to control this guy. Chromium is here we go with an example of chromium. You know, that's a metal that's bad for us. PNSB, in the event that it runs into chromium, can handle this thing 2-3 different ways easily. It'll take chromium. It's got a cysteine protein in it that it makes. It'll take a sulfhydryl group off of that protein. It'll actually take that off by creating the enzyme, the cysteine disulfhydryl enzyme that will rip that sulfite off of that protein, tack it onto the chromium, and turn the chromium into a nanoparticle that is now no longer uptakeable. Yeah. I mean, if that's not the gangster of it, while photosynthesizing, which forget about the level of energy, I won't even get into that, that's required to do that. It's nuts. It's nuts. And fixing nitrogen, right? So here, hold my beer real quick while I handle this chromium. And if it doesn't do it that way, it can, it's a powerhouse of a microbe. And that's just one of them, you know?
Yep. Well, it's really amazing that, and Mo, I love your passion about this, and your understanding is way deeper than mine on, you know, seeing it under the microscope and being able to see what is going on. You know, I took the 30,000 foot view, you know, and looked down and went, oh, okay, well, this is this is this. But you've dialed it, you know, to a much deeper level. And I really appreciate that. And you're showing people about it. But a couple of questions from your channel, because we're broadcasting on your channel, your YouTube, and my YouTube.
Oh, cool.
But, Jeremy, just wondering if rice is a good form of food. Now, I think that's for the biology, or I'm not sure if he's talking about him eating it.
Sure. Well, think about IMO for starters, right? That's what they use to capture fungi. So the starch is in that all day long. Think about a JMS, a Jadam microbial solution. That video, I did a presentation on our future, our soil and our future, but on our future, I made a JMS in like 3 days, and I just used potato, and I only had 3 potato. I took a 40-gallon tank. You boil the potato, you get the starch. So yes, this is how you make labs, right? You make labs with rice wash water. You want the starch, and anytime I do that, I take the rice and I put it somewhere that ends up getting colonized. It's an IMO, right? So when you see that white fungus start growing over it, hey, now you can start your IMO process there. It absolutely is a very good food. They love that. They love the high starch stuff. So potatoes, and that's why it's very popular in the Jadam systems and the K&F system, the natural farming systems. You know, the K&F, I respect and honor it, but it's natural farming, right? It's all over the world. The Egyptians did it. They do it in Mexico. I got an instructor in Mexico that is teaching me a whole different way about how they do it. And it's almost like an aerobic form of K&F, right? And it's mind-blowing that of course, there are these techniques. You know, part of my recovery was I went down the indigenous path because I had to figure out how to do this with no money. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. How did our ancestors do it? You know, how was it done here in America back in the day? How was it done in Mexico and Europe and India? It wasn't done with fertilizers, right? It was done with the earth. And as long as you have a healthy forest type duff, and in this case, even a solid compost pile that's been sitting and moisture has been managed, these microbes come from everywhere, you know. But the idea is to inoculate with what you can. Yeah. But to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, it's all the indigenous, you know, around the world, the farmers around the world for tens of thousands of years. They didn't have chemicals. They didn't have pesticides and herbicides. They took the material that was at hand and used that and passed down from grandfather to son, you know, etc. You know, if you do this and this and this, this is gonna happen, you know. And they didn't use, you know, modern medicine. They use plants to heal themselves. You know, we've lost so much, and it's been corrupted so far, but I look at, the Orient, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans. They have, their medical outlook, the Chinese traditional medicine that has helped for millennia. But we look at it and go, oh, well, our Western medicine is so much better. But then we're only treating symptoms. We're not treating the
That's
cause. We're
it.
not treating
Yeah.
the cause.
And then you take medicines, and guess what? That medicine, in order for it to function, needs to shut something else down.
Yeah.
And that's how that works, right? You're going to take away pain, you need to shut something down in order to take away that pain. And that's just a fact, right? So what are you sacrificing with that versus resetting everything? And that, I mean, that's spot on, and it's all visible, man. It's all relative. And you say you're a $30,000 view away. You're zoomed out, but there's so much I learned from you because you're zoomed out. Because I bypass all that, right? This my passion is here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll always be learning. There's never a point where I will not be learning. I mean, shame on me if I think I will ever know anything. And it's what's exciting about this is, but the cool thing is this, that we can fix it. And it's easy to fix once we understand the fundamentals. Yeah. And when we understand that everywhere I go, there's a biological input opportunity, right? And that biological input opportunity just recently was, there's Rick there, Zockman. Yeah, he knows, a lot of respect to Rick, man. I've learned so much from these guys out there. But that biological input is at the beach. It's outside. It's in that grass. It's here. It's there. It's get it in there, and see what happens. Feed it, feed it what you would say is, I guess the best thing I could tell people is whatever is healthy for you, grind it up, put it in a blender. This Mexican Tithonia here was another lesson I took away from Rick. He's like, Mo, let's put it in a blender, grind it up, put a little sugar in there. 3 days later, I there's so many microbes in there.
Yep.
And all I did was blend it up, right? But we know it's all green manure. It's high in nitrogen, and it's fresh. It's fresh, right? And I say that, I don't know if I want to bust that rabbit hole open, but it's fresh food for the microbes. So if it's something you would eat, feed it to your microbes.
Well, if you really
Rick.
think, your whole body is full of cells, which is full of biology. As soon as you die, let's take a deer on the side of the road that got hit by a car. In a few days, it starts to bloat. That's the gases. That's the biology starting to break down. They went from a living organism and helping that organism stay alive to going, okay, it's time to break this organism down, put it back into the soil so that more plants can go, so that the deer can come and eat those plants and be healthier. And it's that Mother Nature's cycle of everything. But whether we're alive or we're dead, our biology is working in our bodies to do a process. Mother Nature does that process. That's what composting is. You die out in the middle of the bush, or that deer does, it gets broken down into components, put back into the system. That's Mother Nature's compost pile. Every time a leaf falls in the forest, that's Mother Nature's compost pile. It starts to break down. The biology that exists inside of the leaf, inside of the cell, switches from being, a benefit to the plant to going, okay, I'm going to switch, and I'm all of a sudden going to start tearing everything apart, breaking it down to give it back into the cycle of life. People need to understand that.
Yeah, there's so much there, man. It is. First of all, the plant, let's not even forget about the plant. I tend to obsess over the microbe and all the work that I've been doing with the plant. Speaking to certain people, I'll speak on Nick with Broody Leaf, mind blowing, and everything we look at is made from the plant. I mean, look at, I was looking at Josh's video today, Yellow Skunk, and he's showing this monstera that he has, right? And this whopping new leaf that's coming out, right? Where did that come from?
Yep.
That came from sunlight and CO2. That is what happened there, right? And everything you look at some point, a plant made that by taking photosynthesis, CO2, and some water, and making the table that you're sitting on, the chair that you're sitting on, the car that you're driving in, everything is responsible for. The plant's responsible and behind it. And, you know, that's got to be respected. You know, it's just, you know, we sit here and we mow things down, and I'm not going to get pissed off about that because I'll start getting worked up. But, you know, it's impressive, man. And that, you know, a plant's a carnivore. How about that, right? If we're just talking, right, we're vibing. A plant's taking in microbes through rhizophagy and absorbing them. And when the root pops and it sucks these microbes in, and it becomes this fight in my mind. The artistic side of me sees some cell walls being punched out, and it's zapping it with a superoxide, busting the cell wall open, taking the nutrients it needs, hits it again, and then says, all right, get to work. Here's some sugar too. Sorry I had to do that, but I needed that energy. And then it gets even deeper, right? Because now if it needs specific things, it's going to pull those microbes back in, the ones that are going to go mine calcium, boron, manganese, whatever it needs. It's mind-blowing, man. You know, it's so beyond us. And as perfect as they are, you know, we're right there with them. And a lot of people say we're nowhere near as intelligent as a plant. I say it all the time. We're just as crazy our bodies are, right? And it's all relative, man. If that plant and this thing is healthy enough, you know, a lot of times it's just good for the plant, it's good for us. That's not always the case. But this is how I approach these things now. And this is how I'm trying to teach these things to these little ones, because they empower them with this, you know. And you know, Rick, again, man, big promoter. Mo, you're going to be teaching kids. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, take those things with you. You're going to be teaching kids. I'm like, when am I going to be teaching kids, right? He kind of knew it before I did, you know. Yep. And all of a sudden, I aligned myself with a co-op here, a homeschool co-op, you know, in Winter Garden, where we're actually, you know, they feed like 650 families a week out of there, you know.
Cool.
And it's like, you know, whatever inputs I get that may not be, you know, for human consumption, go to animals. And then whatever doesn't go to animals goes to our compost. And we treat this stuff with respect. You know, it's a lot of energy spent, man. That plant is exhausting energy to make this stuff. And, you know, I think that with just respecting it a little more and understanding foundational stuff, you're able to, right out of your property, amend your soils, make your biology, and make enough input that's going to help you sustain and build up your property without you having to break the bank or buy these, you know, and try to fight off these poisons. I mean, come on, sauerkraut, 70 cents or something still. It's one of the things you can still buy for like 70 cents, 80 cents, $1. Yep. Fermented.
It's easy to make. I remember growing up, we had an old crock pot, you know, it was probably 12, 15 gallon crock pot. My German grandmother, you know, she grew cabbage, and we would chop the cabbage, we'd add the salt, and we'd put it in the crock pot, and then we can the sauerkraut ourselves. It's not difficult once you learn how to do it. That's the thing. Like, okay, the first time that you drove a vehicle, was it easy? Hell no. Now, give yourself 10 years. It's like, yeah, my arm's out the window, and right?
Yeah. And how much was it your mental, your psyche, right? Because when I started making this biology, oh my God, it's got to be 3 drops of this, 5 drops of this. Please, man. Again, get it in there, Mo. That's Rick, right? It's not perfect. It's science, yes, but you don't have to be so accurate. Nature doesn't go put 3 drops of this in there and 5 drops of that in there. Exactly. You know, nature doesn't even turn compost. Do we want to get into that? Right? It doesn't. So, you know, these static piles, we've looked at everything. We do this thing, I call it phase composting, where we started composting out of garbage cans.
Okay.
And filling it with water, right? Capping it with water. For those that are out there, go to my channel and look at phase compost. I show how to make this out of a garbage can, where those that don't get rain, Arizona, New Mexico, you can do this out of a garbage can. I did a presentation for Matt Powers, Our Soil, where I show this thing. And this is all, you know, between Rick schooling me up on this and us just dumping microbes in it. They're called electrogenic microbes. Shionella, Geobacter, they work in the depth of anaerobic conditions that have nanowires. Geobacter will run a nanowire, plug into Clostridium, start feeding electrons to Clostridium, and Clostridium will start breaking down iron, start eating metals. This is happening at the depth of an anaerobic state, all the while pushing CO2, which is creating bubbles that's going to create pathways for air, water, oxygen once that thing stabilizes. And some of the biology that I've demonstrated under that system alone, because you're going from anoxic to suboxic to oxic, anaerobic, subanaerobic to, or, in the middle, and then oxygenate, you've got the entire level of microbes. Meanwhile, we're dumping microbes in there, right? Hey, how about that, apple juice that you're not going to drink? Throw it in there. There's sugars in there that's going to set off a different kind of microbe. And temperature controls, right? I've seen microbes. Florida summer, great. I remember when it became winter here. When I say winter in Florida, it's like 50 degrees.
Yeah, you're not winter like I get. It's minus 50 degrees.
Right. But all of a sudden, I'm seeing Diloptis in my teas back when I was brewing a lot. It's a specific type of microbe. And I'm like, what did I do to do this? Because I want more of them. Well, it happened all winter. Summer comes back, no Diloptis, right? I went through another season, Diloptis again. Yep. Temperatures, everything matters. Your pH matters. Your temperatures matter. Anything below 4, you're getting into safe zones where the FDA has even approved, pickling stuff. And if they can pickle it, you can put it in a jar. The data's out there, man. I don't know if it's gate capped. I don't know if it's just that we don't want people to know this. I don't know. But what I do know is that it's doable.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, you look at a cheese, left in a cave with mold all over the walls.
Yeah.
You have to have that mold to make that cheese, because you got to have that bacteria to create that cheese. It's amazing where people just don't understand. And that's where, teaching the kids is so important. Sharing your videos, Mo, is so important. And everybody else, like, Josh and all these different people that are giving back this understanding that they have created through, spending hours upon hours, listening to people like Mo, like me, like Leighton Morrison, like Josh, like Matt Powers. We're all throwing this out to you guys, and just take it in. Take what matters to you in this particular instant, on this particular day, because you may be living in a high rise in India, where you're going, well, how can I do this stuff? Well, take the little pieces that you can do, because you can have a little plant in your window. You can do some seed sprouting, and you can start using that seed sprout water, whether you're giving it to a plant or you're drinking it. Because when that seed cracks open, the biology that exists inside that seed is sprayed into that water, and all of a sudden that water is full of living biology. And I am telling people for quite a long time now to do that and use that to water their plants, because all of a sudden you've got all this biodiversity. If you have 10 different types of seed that you're doing, sprouting, and all of a sudden you're adding all that different types of biology to your soil, all of a sudden you've got this bloom of biodiversity that you never had before. And it's like, all of a sudden, this microbiology that, was never there before being created, because all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of new genetic code added in the system, and it's still gene transfer, because all of a sudden this is available now. And it's like, all of a sudden your plant's going, oh, geez, I can actually take this genetic code that's in this cell and go, I have this component now. I have this biology now. I can do this and this and this, where it could never do it before.
Yep. You're adding tools to that tool, that toolbox, I went to, stop by to visit my mom the other day. And I it's so funny. She looks at me now like, oh, now you want to know, right? She was building her soil and she had her bottle of collagen there or whatever inputs that she has. I said, Mom, what are you doing with this? She said, what do you think I'm doing? I'm putting it in the soil. And then like, for what? And now I'm just poking at her. I know why she's doing it. She's like, well, because it's good for you. So, and then she's learned about the microbes from me, right? Because she doesn't know this, right? She just knows, you just know,
it
right?
Works.
You're from the ranch.
Yep.
You're from, yeah. So Yeah, absolutely. So that collagen is sitting there and it's insoluble form, but it's in there. And when the microbes, when the plant says, and so you go look at the back of that collagen and it's got like magnesium and whatever else it has in it. Well, now your miners, right? Your plant's going to send the signal when it needs, and it's smart. It knows it's going to need calcium. And I'm just throwing tomorrow, right? Next week.
Yeah.
It knows soon enough I need calcium. Let me send the signal now. Wake up those miners, those microbes. That bacterium that's going to go mine that is going to wake up and go get it, right? But now that it has it, and it's the coolest thing, if you can imagine it, it's this little round dot that shuttles out enzymes. These enzymes are like little knives. Once it finds the calcium, it sends out these little knives to start chopping it up and solubilizing it, and then it absorbs it into its, beyond the cell walls and into its cytoplasm, right? But now it has it, but it's locked in that bacteria. That bacteria cannot release it. It needs to be eaten by a predator, and that predator will poop it out, and it will be available to the plant. This is where the soil food web, from top to bottom, as above, so below, is the niche I've been hearing all the time now. Those predators are going to wake up and attack that thing. So it doesn't happen without the nutrients there. And in Florida, I could speak in sandy soils, and this is where, as I get better at what I do and understanding wise, I understand Rick's obsession with putting minerals. We don't have minerals in their sand, right? We don't. So, I mean, yeah, we have the sand. Sand has its specific minerals, but we don't have what clay has, and it's hard to get clay around here. We have to chuck that in. So, understanding how that works, understanding that these microbes are holding this nutrients, and when it gets eaten and processed, it's now available to the plant. They're communicating. So if you can get something, if you eat a salad, that's why bokashi. That's why I'm so addicted to bokashi. The implications of bokashi are insane. Everybody should be running a bokashi bucket, because one, we start getting to redox, which we don't even know what time we have, but we don't want to go there. We're reducing it though. It is a ball of energy at the end of the day. That thing is an energy bomb. Because it's reduced, its pH is low. It's got all these nutrients that the microbes have now extracted and made available. For the most part, they are chelated and ready to feed the plant. Imagine the plant is spending so much energy to do what it needs to do. I mean, photosynthesis is insane, and we don't even want to get into that. But the energy that it takes to create these sugar molecules and the processed nitrogen, you're basically handing over. It's like if you're hungry, I can give you a cow and you got to go kill the cow. You got to butcher it. You got to skin it. You got to chop it, dice it, slice it. Or here's a meal. Here's a steak cooked, salsa on it, ready to go with some tortillas and beans. And there's a drink. The plant's saying, oh, damn. Okay, then I'm going to use the energy that I was going to use for that now to continue maybe secondary metabolites. Let's go. Look, I was looking at Josh's system today. I mean, I follow that system like it's no one's business. His leaves are, they're shiny, right? These shiny leaves are secondary metabolites that are just kind of like he was explaining today on his live that when he first started his system, he was dealing with bugs. He was dealing with pests. Of course he was. Once his system balanced out, once his sugars in those plants became, strong, and the proteins and everything gave time to develop, he doesn't deal with these bugs. His Brix numbers must be insane there, because it's all nutrient that's constantly flowing and being pushed by water. But yeah, I'll go off sometimes, bro. My bad.
Hey, man, Mo,
I feel like I just got bringing it back into my chair, like, and I'm not even lit.
We love it, man. You look at Leighton, you look at me. We go off on tangents, and we can do our rants, etc. We love that, because that just shows the reality. That shows our passion. Yeah. And, it's, I know a lot of people come to this channel specifically for that kind of stuff, because we're real.
I know. Hey, absolutely. There's just that level, man. And we're always itching for more, man. That's, I always say when it comes to our little group of regenerates, I say we the obsessed, right? Because it's never enough. Where we just sit there and we'll go 4-hour sessions on Zoom, just hanging out. It's late night, and we're talking about some stuff that it's like I love that Cuauhtemoc Villa. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I tell you what, that guy, he's gone into that that I'll talk about. I'll go back to squid juice. I'm telling you, I'm obsessed with what they're doing. They're structuring water. They've got 1,100 acres. Not squid. The guy's Sabbath soil. 1,100 acres.
Yep.
They're structuring water. This is how they're watering the system. They've got like magnets that they're pushing frequencies into, so they're programming water, right?
Yep.
And they're broadcasting the water to their crops, and then they have these sonic blooms. Have you heard of the sonic blooms?
No, I haven't yet.
So they have a pole with a box at the top of the pole, every 200 acres, I believe it is, and it chirps like a bird. That frequency that promotes budding, that promotes flowering, this communication with birds and plants. That I was listening to some quantum shit the other day where the birds wake the plants up to get ready for the sun to come up, and it's kind of like, all right, all systems up, kind of like in a cockpit, hit all the switches, let's get ready for flight here, dude. We're gonna start photosynthesizing, pulling them out of the dark cycle and getting them into the day.
Yeah. Well, for up here, it's getting out of winter into spring and summer.
Yeah, which is really wild because I remember that deep dive I went into. My nephew was serving in Alaska, and we started talking about these large periods of time where there's no sunlight, and so where are they getting oxygen? It's the ocean, right? That's another thing. Like 70% of our oxygen comes from the ocean.
Yep.
How was I going to know that? It's like, what? Dude, and here we are destroying the ocean. It's like, okay, let's just fuck it all up, So, not to be negative, but, it's just a little bit of awareness, man, and if we could take away, I had a parent come to the little place where I teach, wanted to meet me because her daughter, when they were out gardening, told her, be careful with the microbes.
Yeah.
That's a victory and a half for me. Because if I can plant that seed, and even 10 years from now, a lot more than I knew when I was your age, that there are microbes in there. So her mother wanted to know what she was talking about, which is really interesting because the mom is the gardener, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this is happening. You want me to show you? Like, here, we got the scope. Let's fire it up. She sat in that whole class and was like, I think she almost started tearing up. It was like, yeah, this is life. This is a level of life that we need to pay attention to, and it's the most important.
Well, if we don't start paying attention to it, we're going to lose it, and if we lose it, let's see, we just cease to exist on this planet.
That's it. Yeah. We'll be, all these illnesses. I was I'm on a book here where they're talking about ocean and ocean water, and talking about trout specifically as part of what I remember here. There's no cancer in trout in the ocean, but it's fresh water. It's a problem. So we start getting into ocean water, right? And it starts, harvesting ocean water. I was with the little ones the other day. My nieces and nephews harvesting ocean water because I'm going to make a ferment. Don't be scared to use ocean water. There's the data's out there. The data's out there. And that book was probably like 30 years old. So we have this data. It's not out there, and a lot of these things are going behind paywalls too. So if I want to go learn about fungal spores, one of the best books to learn about that now runs about $1,300 to $1,400.
Ouch!
Yeah, it's a book that Matt pulls up in class all the time. I mean, that's a wild price. How are you going to learn? Or you can go hit these paywalls that are kind of like, well, if you want this data, you're going to have to pay, and we're going to take your IP and dump it. But different story there, dude. And to me, it's a fight, it's a battle. Like I love it. I'm all for it. That's where iGrow comes from. When I saw that documentary, where they burned down the guy's facility. I've always forget the name of it, where he's got that carbon. He's using cyanobacteria and charcoal, biochar, to sequester carbon at a rate of like something like would take 100 years worth in a week. I'll send you that link. That mind blowing, and it just mysteriously got burned down. And it's a fight to me, and it's just it makes it exciting. It's like, okay, let's go after this thing, man. How many people can I teach this to? How many people can I go on my social media and say, look, this is how we make egg amino acid. I just learned about it, but in India they use it for asthma, and guess what? It's phenomenal for your plants.
Yeah,
can't argue that, man. It's eggs and lemon, by the way. How many people have chickens?
I wish I did, but my wife, I almost say that she loves every pet we have or have had. If we had cattle, they would be named and they would be petted and groomed every day. And heaven forbid that they get harvested for hamburger. She would never eat it. So it's like I can't allow that to happen. So I don't particularly have. I got cats and dogs, and we're down to our last dog, but if you have the ability to have that, you're so much further ahead as a gardener using that.
And the great part about it is that most people, I mean, you'll be able to somewhere find chickens, hopefully around you, where they have an abundance, right? I mean, if we share abundance, can you imagine if everyone just shared their abundance, right? Just a little bit of it, it would go it would go so far, it just.
Can you name those books? I know Perpetual. He's in I think Sweden or Switzerland. He's over in Europe somewhere, but he wants to know what books you were just talking about.
I don't remember it off the top of my head, and I don't want to. You can email me IgroSoil@outlook.com, and I promise you I'll get you the name of that book, IgroSoil@outlook.com.
And he's also on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, well. Instagram. Yeah, just say hey, about that fungal book, and I'll definitely send that information to you. If you're out of the U.S., you might even get it cheaper. But even on Amazon, it's a ridiculously priced book. But it's a very good, one of the best for identifying certain fungi, especially under the microscope with what we do. And if you're looking to chase biology, David Seymour, he's out of Australia. I don't know if you know who he is, but he has spent his life drawing microbes. I mean, cool. His story is amazing. He got, I guess it's something like he got a school bus and decided to travel to every pond. 20 years with a microscope and his artistic ability and some of his. I use his books as an identifier for microbes because I start obsessing over what am I looking at, what are they doing, what's the relationship, this is that, and it's so cool to know and start understanding that I've got videos of microbes that are attaching themselves to other microbes, sucking the life out of it. Meanwhile, this thing is just continuing. Like, does it even know? Does it know that it's about to die? Is it? Who knows? They just kind of continue. They keep cycling until they don't.
When you get a virus, do you even know? You just keep on going on with your day, and it keeps killing you. So it's predator prey, baby. Everybody's eating everybody.
And it's not just eating. I'm going to use a rotifer as an example. Rotifer's got these let's call them fans, right? And I can always come back on and show these. I have infographics that I've designed for my students with it, and it creates vortexes, and it's a very powerful vortex. If you can imagine, the water is viscous and it's still just cycling everything. And as they travel, when if you know what quorum sensing is, right? Bacteria they communicate through autoinducers, and they kind of come together, and they can cause havoc or they can be great, right? Depending on the conditions. But these rotifers will blast through these colonies. And let's say it was potentially a pathogenic colony because the soil is healthy. That microbe is there and it's dissipating those microbes throughout the soil. It's breaking up that party. Like, no, it's not going to happen because all these other microbes are stomping around. And this is an aquatic. A rotifer usually is in a more aquatic soil. But in Florida, they're in our compost because we get a lot of rain. We get a lot of moisture. I manage here at 40-50% moisture if we can. That's just ideal. These things swim. I was listening to your guy the other night on one of your lives where he was talking about water, structured water. Under the microscope, if I put a drop of water on soil, just like a vacuum seal, that's how the water wraps itself around soil. And it's that thin layer of water that these microbes are just dipping and traveling through. It's impressive stuff. They don't need much.
Well, molecules, and that's the thing. Like we talk about, I take biology as everything. It doesn't matter what type. It doesn't matter what size. We're biology. An elephant is biology, and so is the protoplasm. It's all interconnected.
Sure,
but when we start to truly understand that, that's when we take a huge step forward, at least in our understanding that if you have the opportunity to make, bokashi, to make lactic acid bacteria, labs, or, a WCA, a water soluble calcium, or a fish amino acid, if you can have the ability to do any of that kind of thing, even if you're in a high rise apartment, you have no plants, you're never going to use it, make it, take it out, and put it in the local pond,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because add that biology. If we can get 5% of our planet back to optimum health biologically, then we don't have to worry about, being kicked off this planet. It only
Yeah.
takes 5%.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. If I could change over one neighbor to start growing maybe a food for, not even Florida, we're fortunate, we've got the tropical vibe here.
Yep.
Grow some trees, man. How about that? All this, we get all technical and we get all deep, and all these microbes and all this fluid, all these things that we mix and grow a plant. Yeah. Put a plant in soil and feed it. I'll quote Daniel on that all day. Just take care of as much as you can and water it and give it attention, and it's going to grow for you, and it's going to start fixing soil, and it's going to start the process. And then next thing you know, and weeds, they're there for a reason. I'd rather have roots in the ground than not, because the roots in the ground, they're there to protect your soil and your sand and your clays and your silts. They're there. The sun is beating on raw soil, and it's called the Fenton reaction. It's beating the soil so bad that it starts releasing carbon and nitrogen. Now you're really screwed, right? Because now you're really killing your plant. Your soil. I'd rather have weeds there that are protecting that. I don't mind the weeds. Well, they're little flowers on them for the most part. I don't think I've ever
I call them medicinal plants, for the soil. Right. Most of the weeds, are good for our body when we consume them. They're medicinal for our bodies. And Mother Nature, there's a reason she's putting them there. They're bioaccumulators. When they die, they get mixed back into the soil. The components that they brought up through their biology are necessary for that soil to be healthy. That's why she's putting them there. And of course, like you said, to cover the soil, she does not like bare soil.
No. And Dr. Elaine Ingham taught that a lot of these seeds germinate because they're being hit by the sun.
Yep.
So there's nothing protecting the soil. So these seeds sitting on top will germinate because of that reason.
Yep.
So I encourage you to take those weeds and ferment them, because what he just said was that they're pulling what the soil is lacking. Right?
Yep.
If your soil is short on calcium, those weeds are probably down deep digging for calcium. So then you take those weeds and you ferment them and you pull the calcium out of that.
Yep.
And then reapply that, then apply that to your soil.
Yeah. Yeah. I did want to come back to this. All comes down to quality of water. And I'm lucky. I have a well. I'm on well. I'm not on town water or city water. If you are, then you want to, if you're having your garden, you want to have it filtered. We often talk about Blue Sky Biochar. He's got a filter on there, just attaches to your hose, just a basic filter. I have RO water. When I was growing my cannabis, that's what I used, was RO, reverse osmosis. But you can actually take your water, and like Josh is a perfect example. He's got his little creek. Well, if you put, an old wash, I can't remember the rack, the little rib. If you have a water pump that comes up and goes and it ripples like that, you're energizing your water. You're structuring your water. I've literally used a funnel with glass marbles and poured water through those marbles, breaks up the molecules, excites the molecules, electrons and neutrons and protons, energize. Right. That's structured water. It's as easy as that. It's as easy as Mother Nature putting it through a stream, a waterfall. That's all structured water. Create your own in your own environment. if you are watering your plants, have a 5 gallons of water, on a cycle with a little fish pump that you can buy and have it going through a bunch of rocks, and it's going to remineralize, etc. Use that water. You're going to be far better off than taking water out of a tap that's all chemicalized from your city. So there's all kinds of easy, natural ways. And Mo, you're talking about it before, going back to the native ways of what they did. And it's cheap, it's easy, because they didn't have money back then. It was all, parlay, exchanging goods.
Yeah.
That's how they worked. We don't have to have money to do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, we do a lot of testing here, and I can go dive on this city water, man, and this chlorine stuff. And I'll tell you what, we've tested all those devices that you spend money on and attach them to your hoses. We've even, part of the group, one of the guys in the group had the city come out with $20,000 testers. And the reality is this. So my compost piles that I compost out of here, I'm city water at the house. Mm-hmm. And I dedicated 2 piles to nothing but chlorinated water. The biology is flawless. The biology is flawless.
Okay.
Where, water from a distance. By the time that chlorine gases off easily, it's the chloramine that we have problems with, right? And then the fluorides or whatever that is, I think in Florida they removed that. But for a while there, I wasn't being too smart about this. I wasn't watering. If I ran out of rainwater, I'm like, I'm not watering my chlorinated water. So then let everything die. You know what I mean? This didn't make sense. So I started capping the top. I make bioreactors for the most part, my compost piles. But I started capping the top of my bioreactors with compost. Okay. Because by the time that water, and I would water from the top, by the time that water gets through that 2 or 3 inches of compost, the chemistry is locking. When you start understanding there's a chemistry, humic acids, fulvic acids that are binding up that chlorine and hopefully some of that chloramine. But, we've tested a lot of these things, and it's
and that's putting it through a biological cycle. Have you tried feeding that water directly to a plant and see?
Don't make a tea. Don't make a tea with it. Right? This is like too much of something is going to kill you. But I water my plants are covered with mulch. So it's the same concept, right?
Yeah.
That water is going through the mulch, and that mulch is picking up whatever chlorine, and I'll also water from a distance. So I respect, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not effective. I mean, it won't affect. But do these things to avoid some of it. And, some of us just have no choice, right? I have no choice unless I go dig a well on my property. And, I'm happy with what I'm seeing as far as the biology, because the biology tells the story, right? If the microbes aren't happy, they'll let you know, just like Josh's system. Yeah. When he recently took that crash, that biology made it very clear. Mm-hmm. So the ability to go get it, and you don't need a $7,000 microscope, right? Any microscope that's going to get you in at 100, 200, it's going to show you life. It's going to show you that things are happening there. It's going to show you everything you need to know. And
that's the thing, like we were talking last night on Leighton's show, all these tests that can be done, they're hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, where you can literally, just take, the sugar test put it on the lens. And I don't know why my brain's bricks. There we go. Bricks.
Yeah.
And that's perfect for a citizen scientist, and you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on these, sap analysis, etc.
Hey, no. I think it's like $20 on that thing's like $20 or $18 on Amazon. And you know what? Coincidentally, Ken, that ended up being one of my best classes. You put a couple of those in the hands of these kids, and you set them loose in a garden with the understanding of what it does. Oh, I had them tasting oranges and tasting things. And, of course, we were just testing the bricks of the fruit itself. But then they got into this whole guessing game. Well, it's going to be like a 7 or 8. Imagine how accurate these kids are, right? Like, so my students now, I can go over there, hand them a tomato and say, what do you think the bricks is on that? And they went, probably like an 8. That's a good one, Mr. Mo. It's sweet, and imagine they're going to carry this with them, they're going to carry that with them. But yeah, How about that? How about
the
bricks?
groceries? They're gonna go into the grocery store and be tasting, going, "Ugh, that's gross, man. That must have came from California." Okay,
Your brick sucks. You know,
that's not
gonna be
healthy, man.
a high compliment one day if one of these kids shouts out, "Your bricks suck." You know, like yes, beautiful. We've learned.
Oh,
I also meet up with some people from the other coast that teach their kids. So Joey Microbe, he'll go out, take his kids on an excursion, a hiking trip. They'll harvest whatever they harvest. He gets on the scope. I dive in that Zoom with these kids, and it's like let's turn this into a little Zoom meet with the little ones, man. And how cool is that? They got to go on this trip. They got to harvest whatever they harvested, and now they're sitting with us on the microscope looking at it all. And there's
cool.
So many ways, especially homeschool kids and stuff like that. It's something that should happen more often.
Well, anyway, Mo, we're at an hour and a half or an hour and 35 minutes. And
yeah,
Serena, no, I didn't put up any of your jokes today. I mean, I haven't been really following the chat that much. I've been following what Mo's been saying more. But I will put up this one, Serena. What does a grape do when you step on it? It's just letting out a little wine. But Mo, I want to say thank you so much for coming on.
That's awesome.
We'll have to come on again, and I'd love to come on with you guys on your channel as well, and hang out and shoot the shit.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll definitely send you that link. It's not a show, but we get together and we solve things.
Solve the world's problems.
Yeah, we swear we do. We walk away with more questions than answers, but it's definitely invited for sure. I'd love to have you there.
Oh, and I'd love to be there. Talking with people that understand this and share the values, because it's all about values. We don't do this. I'm not doing this for money. Although if you guys want to support the channel, click the join button, become a defender of the biology. It does help pay for the programs we use, but that's not the reason I do this. It's because I want to share. I want to teach you guys how you can help yourselves, because I can't do it. I can't come to your house and plant a garden for you. I can't plant a garden on my own dang property. Okay, I can mow grass. I can do that. But it's become a lit candle. Become like Mo has become, and Josh has become, and so many other people that are getting onto YouTube and Instagram, etc., sharing this knowledge, and not bro science, but actual, understanding the science behind this. Like most, Matt Powers, Elaine Ingham, Gerald Pollock. There's so many people that are sharing the truth. Track the truth, share it, live it, breathe it, and teach the children like Mo is doing, because that's the future.
That's the answer. That's the answer.
Guys, peace out, Mo. I love you, brother. I
appreciate you, man. Same, bro. Thank you. Yeah, we'll get you on. I'm going to start going live on my platform with microscope stuff. Have you come on and cool. I figure I'm just gonna go live and share it. And the more people can see it, the more we'll understand it. So yeah, I'll definitely keep in touch, and I'll reach out with that link. Now, appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining, everyone. That's awesome. Sorry, I didn't get to the chats, but
yeah. Peace, guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Don't forget Andy Lopez and myself on Gardens the Untold Story. We'll see you.